Welcome to I'll Marry You, a podcast with me, Olivia Coleman, full of tips and tricks from the UK wedding scene, interviews with industry experts, and a whole lot of oversharing. Hi. If you're listening to this, I apologise in advance because I can only assume that no matter what level of wizardry producer Drew has up his sleeve, he probably can't fix the sound on this intro, given that I'm recording it on my phone, in my car, in the Tesco's car park. I've had a morning. I've got so much I wanted to talk to you about, and I was excited to talk to you about it, and now I'm like, well, whatever. It's this storm, isn't it? It's the storm BERT. BERT. I don't understand. Where I live, we're on national news because everywhere's flooded. Like whole towns are under siege, underwater. It's absolutely mental. Yesterday, it should have taken me 50 minutes to get to the wedding, and it took me just under 2 hours. It was incredibly stressful. I got there 15 minutes before the ceremony was due to start. And I'm stressed, but I have to act like, oh my God, fine, absolutely fine. Like, I'm here, whatever, it's cool. And I was like flapping like nobody's business, I tell you. When it was happening, this storm, because now it's gorgeous sunshine, isn't it? Which is not reflective of my current emotional state. But when the storm was happening at the weekend, I was driving to a wedding. Well, James drove because, you know, I'm pregnant. I can't possibly drive myself. I can cook for him and do his washing, but I can't possibly drive myself. But actually, in hindsight, the weather was unbelievable. So it was good that he drove, and it was a good 3.5 hours there and back. Anyway, that night after the wedding, which was gorgeous, it was a vow renewal for Angie and Julian. But that night, I thought, because I don't sleep anymore, and I thought, if I go into labour tonight, like that was it then, my mind was gone. Because I was like, everything's flooded, the rain hasn't stopped, how are we going to get to the hospital? We're at my parents' house, so we weren't near like Bath Hospital where I plan on having the baby. And where my parents live is in between Hereford and Gloucester Hospital, like equidistant, my favourite word. So I was lying in bed and I was like, where am I going to choose? Do I choose Hereford or Gloucester? Obviously not Gloucester, rough as a dog's arse in Gloucester. But is it closer? I was having all these dilemmas. And then I was thinking about names, and I was thinking, we don't have a middle name picked out. I must remind myself, what's this storm called? Because if she's born tonight, we could call her after the storm. And then I saw that it was called BERT, and I thought, no, that's not going to work. And then I remembered that on James and mine's wedding day, we also had a storm, a named storm, so you know it's bad. And I thought, oh, well, that could be a middle name. That's a bit of fun, isn't it? And that storm was called Brian. So that was a no-go as well. And anyway, I didn't go into labour, did I? So then I had this wedding yesterday, which is absolutely gorgeous. I knew it would be glam. And the bride and groom are very attractive. He's almost like dreamy, like swoony attractive. Clooney attractive and swoony attractive. And with my hormones kicking off all over the shop. Anyway, I made it eventually, and it was gorgeous. I'll tell you all about it during a story time. But it was lovely. But then this morning, then last night, I'm just ranting at you. This is just my therapy session. Last night, we wanted to put the lights on the tree, and I found a new method. So I thought, I'm going to do it. And normally it's James's job. And so I did half of it, and we ran out of lights. So he comes home, and he's an absolute bloody hero, and goes back out to B&Q at 7 o'clock at night, in the BERT aftermath, to buy some more lights. And I'm like, oh, I'm in love with my husband, marry the man who buys the lights, ha, ha, ha. And within half an hour of him coming home, I was crying in the bathroom, wasn't I? Because he was such an arse. Because he was all OCD about the lights. He's like, you can't do the lights like that. And I'm like, I will do the lights how I want to do the lights. He was being an arse, and I'm extra teary and hormonal, and it's just a really bad combination. And you know, when you've got these expectations, I was like, I'm trying to film this for Instagram. you know, for memories. We filmed the Christmas tree decorating every year. It's the last one with just Lola. It was so emotional. Anyway, he slept in the spare room. Not because our argument was that bad, we resolved it, but because I snore now, which is a pregnancy thing. But literally every single morning for the last 2 weeks, he's gone, gosh, you've never snored that loud before. Every fucking morning. Excuse my swearing. I don't know why I say that. I swear all the time, don't I? But every morning he said the same thing. And I'm like, every morning, it's not going to change. Here I am, still pregnant. So he slept in the spare room, which was probably the best for our marriage. And then this morning I woke up to go and get my wisdom tooth out. The joy just keeps on coming. And I've just spent just under an hour driving a route that should take literally 5.5 minutes because all the towns near us are still flooded. And I thought, do you know what? I don't want my wisdom tooth out, full stop, right now. And this is God's sign. This is God and BERT telling me that today is not the day, that this is not my story. So I turned around, I've come back towards home, and I thought, do you know what? I'm going to salvage the last 12 hours, and I'm going to go to Tesco, and I'm going to sit in the newly refurbed cafe, and I'm going to have a cup of tea and a sausage sandwich. Maybe buy myself a little sequin jumper that I can't fit into. And that's my story. This week's episode is part 2 of the interview with Felicia from 10 Task. I'm so excited about it. If you haven't listened to part 1 last week, you must. It was absolutely brilliant, really interesting, really fascinating woman, and all of her insights and the work that she does with her app, with her online course, is incredible. So enjoy part 2 and think of me. I'm really suffering. I love you all. I have a thing where I have blue days, and I've suffered with depression and anxiety in the past, and some days I just wake up and this is a blue day, and there's no particular reason, there's nothing that you can do, it just is what it is and it will pass. And so we call it a blue day. So sometimes I'll just send him a text message in the morning and say, I'm having a blue day, and he knows that like you say with code words, he knows that just means it is what it is. Nothing that anyone can do, just maybe give me an extra big cuddle, or, you know, buy me some chocolate or whatever. And we were talking about that the other day, and we were saying how it's very difficult for us if we think that we're going to be questioned and challenged when we speak about how we feel. We're nervous to do it. Tools to communicate to their partner as well, because it's quite intimidating to be that vulnerable to anyone, even if it is your partner.
No, that's right. And I think communication, particularly around challenging issues like that, is something that almost every couple that I talk to has challenges with. Communication's tough. We're not really raised to communicate well. And to go back to what we were talking about in terms of, domestic labor, that all comes from the role modeling from our family as well. So, you know, we kind of play out these same things in our own relationships because we don't have better tools.
Do you think it's different with the different generations? Do you think that the younger generation, who are now maybe in their early mid-20s, who are thinking about getting married, do you think that their division of labor and and household chores, do you think that their balance is better than those who are perhaps already married?
I'm not sure. I want to be hopeful that it is, but unless the work is done to be very clear about how each partner wants that to come to be, I worry that same cycle is going to continue because, again, it's, if they were raised in an environment where mom did everything, then both parties are going to expect that mom's going to do everything. So it still comes down to some tactical work done by the members of the relationship to get it right.
So when people come to you for Tend Task, so Tend Task is the app, but you also offer coaching courses.
Yeah, so Tend Task is the kind of overarching platform. So the name comes from the concept of tending to each other instead of tending to
Mhm.
the tasks that life throws our way. So the app is called Tend Task Household Organizer, and the coaching. Yes, there are various programs based on what stage of relationship you are in. We can just do custom coaching as well, but yeah, that's how that works.
So in terms of your target client, I suppose, how much of your clients, what percentage do you think are a younger couple embarking on marriage for the first time, as opposed to maybe a couple who have children and have been married for a few years, as opposed to a couple who are sort of, they've got kids who are maybe in their teenage years and they're struggling in their marriage. What generally is the type of person that would come to you through Tend Task?
Well, I mostly work with young parents. That, as we talked about before, that's kind of when things get hard, is as
Yeah.
when kids enter the picture. But I have recently, part of the reason for reaching out to you is I've recently launched this premarital coaching program. So to help kind of couples get their things together earlier in the relationship and have much more chance of success. The wedding planning process is also infiltrated with all of these kind of gendered um, traditions and norms around who does all the planning, who makes the decisions, who's going to pay for what, all of these things. So I actually use that process. I use the wedding planning process as an example, as a way of highlighting how things can transpire later in the relationship. Because a lot of couples, without even knowing it, they set themselves up for failure through the wedding planning process. So yes, I've recently launched this premarital coaching program.
That's so interesting, because I've the amount of times I've heard men be like, "Oh well, darling, you planned the wedding so well. You're so good at organizing, and you love organizing, and you
Yep,
love spreadsheets, and you love admin, and it does tend to fall on the woman." And we are talking about heterosexual couples here, but
that's right.
uh, with people who identify themselves as men and women. But in those couples, it does tend to fall to the woman to do it. And actually, strangely enough, I had a meeting last night with a new couple and he reached out to me, but they found that amusing in themselves, that he was the one that was sorting things out and that was organizing things.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I mean, it's that's so interesting that you've sort of pinpointed it, that even from the beginning stages, when you're madly in love and can't get enough of each other and you're planning this gorgeous day to celebrate your union, there's still
yeah. Well, there's all this cultural conditioning around weddings and being a bride. That it's the pinnacle of womanhood. It's the thing we all dream about from the time that we're little
yeah.
girls, of our wedding day. And so it becomes like, well, it's your big day, right? It's the bride's big day, and so of course you're going to take the lead in all of the planning. So that sets you up to be the one who notices all the things that get done, who or that need to get done, who acts on them, who uh, kind of does all the family management. It's called kin keeping. So knowing the preferences of your family and what family drama is happening and how to manage that and who should get seated at what table, and so it sets couples up for this lifelong um, way of doing things. And so if we can interrupt that, I'm always looking at how can we interrupt that process in a way that's
Mm,
beneficial to the couple.
that's so interesting. So many times my couples will say, she's in charge, she's doing everything, and then if he's doing anything, it's normally the music and the alcohol,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and she's doing everything else. And
Mm-hmm.
then And so couples will come to you. Let's talk practically then. So how
Yeah.
would it practically work? They download the app on both of their phones. Is it something that they do together? Is there sort of weekly sessions? How does it work if you just sign up to the app?
Sure. So the app is a tool that I use within the coaching program. So we don't actually get to the app until I think module 3 of the
Okay.
program. So there's light coursework that goes along with it. There's little lessons that happen on a weekly basis. I have 2 tiers for however couples want to work with me. So I have kind of a self-guided um, course that couples can go through that is a 12-week course, and there is some support through like office hours where they can access me, and but they're mostly self-guided on that. Or if they want to do kind of go through their whole wedding planning process together with private coaching, they can do that in a full year long process. And in that case, we would meet monthly. They would have exercises that they would do, and then I would coach them through either the exercises or whatever comes up that they want to work through. And then I also offer conflict management sessions in addition to that on the private coaching. So that can be like a group facilitation. Say the bridal party goes awry and they need support in getting through that. I'll coach them through that as well.
Oh my God, I love that. I just want to take you in my pocket to every conversation that I have. Like, look, can you just hold on? Because Felicia's got some thoughts. So, but do you
Pocket Felicia.
actually, yeah, exactly. That would be, WWFD. Do you actually, you don't plan the wedding as such. You coach them through their journey of planning the wedding.
That's right. I coach them on the relationship while they're going through the wedding planning process. So I often partner with wedding planners and other wedding professionals
Mm-hmm.
to, many planners or officiants might suggest to their couples that they do some sort of premarital program. So I often work with wedding planners to kind of take that emotional labor off of their end, so they're not having to be responsible for the relationship health. They don't have to deal with the things that inevitably come up in the drama of wedding planning.
Mm.
They have a support system that they can turn to, a relationship coach, to deal with the relational issues.
Because it's in the UK, it's if you're getting married uh, non-religiously, so a civil ceremony,
Yeah.
you would there's no coaching, there's no discussion really. There's what date do you want to do it, and then we'll see you there.
Yeah.
But with a religious ceremony, there can be, it varies hugely depending on not just the religion, but dependent on that particular church, that particular person, the vicar or the priest. It depends hugely on that. But so there's not even not always with a religious wedding ceremony would you have any kind of coaching. Sometimes you might have just one conversation. I think my husband and I, we got married in a Church of England church, and we just had a couple of coffees with the vicar and sort of just general chit chat. But
Yeah.
even so, there was no course, there was no guidance, there was nothing like that. People ask me as a celebrant, do we have to do stuff? I'm like, no, you just have to, get a little tipsy and fill out a questionnaire. It's absolutely fine. But it would be such a relief to know that they were going through something and they were learning about things and they were experiencing this other side of wedding planning, because it's extremely stressful.
Yeah.
Unless you've bought a house beforehand, it's probably the first time you spent this much money together
That's
and
right.
had to factor in family and friends. And there's so much to think about. It's a huge test to a relationship, isn't it? Planning a wedding.
It's huge. And you make a really good point that it's oftentimes the first big project that they do together.
Mm,
And it's, a wedding is supposed to be um kind of the coming out of your relationship to the world, right? It's your representation of your love and your relationship, and you're joining
mm,
together to your family and friends. And that's also why it's problematic to have only one of the members planning it, because it's for both of you. So, um, yeah,
And it's the pressure, like you say, it is. It's like a coming out of your relationship. When I used to work at a wedding venue, and my couples would come and they would say, "Oh, even now they would say, oh, I want a castle. I want a castle, and a princess gown, and a castle, and white swans, and doves, and fireworks." And I would, and they would put themselves under so much financial pressure to create this magical, completely over the top wedding day. And I would always, always say to my couples, I do now, but do you live in a castle? No. Do you have fireworks every day? No. Do you enjoy swans? No. Well, then why on God's green earth are you having something that doesn't represent who you are, and it's
yeah,
putting you under financial and emotional pressure? But that's a dream. That's what social media and television and movies has taught us that we should have, rather than
exactly.
actually the day that represents us, not just the bride, but us as a couple.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, weddings make people bonkers.
Crazy.
They make them bonkers, and
They do, don't they?
they do, they do, and again, that comes from this idea that it's this one day, and you'll never have an opportunity again, and you should plan for it your whole life, and all the nonsense that goes along with it. But when I talk to young couples, I like to encourage them to take at least a little bit of that energy and start planning your lives and your marriage
Yes.
with it, you know? So maybe like extract the fireworks or the swans and say, okay, I'm going to simplify this just enough so that I have the energy to really think about what my marriage is going to look like. Because if you're
Mm.
one, you're setting the dynamics that one partner is doing all of you carrying the mental load and doing all of the emotional labor. And two, you're setting yourselves up for financial strain and financial stress for years to come to pay off, one day's worth of activities. Um, those are not ideal conditions under which to thrive in a relationship. Yeah.
Well, no, absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, if you had a teenage son or daughter, well, you have a son in his early 20s, if he came to you and said, "Oh, I've just met someone and I really like them. We're going to start dating, but actually, just before we start dating, she did tell me that she owes the bank $20,000, and also there's some drama with her mum, and she she likes to buy Birkin bags, but she's also in debt, and all this stuff. The
Yeah.
kind of stuff that happens with weddings. You'd be like, "What are you doing? Don't date. You don't start a relationship like that. So why would
What are
you
you
start a
doing?
marriage like that?"
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
So when couples come to you for 10 tasks, and for specifically for the premarital program, do you find that they're both coming to you as open and freely as the other, or do you find, let's be honest, that it's the bride dragging the groom along up the
You know,
aisle?
for a long time that was the case, but I am noticing that many young men are more interested in being good partners, being heard. I think one of the things that often
Mm,
isn't spoken about is men's feelings are very frequently dismissed. They're not given the
yeah.
space to feel their emotions. And so I have a lot of men who are very engaged in the process and really get a lot out of it, and really want that um, equal partnership that we're talking about.
And do you have many gay couples that sign up?
I haven't worked with as many gay couples. I do some research on a different subset of couples that has more LGBTQ participants. But
Hmm.
for this particular premarital dynamic that we're talking about is much more heterosexual in nature. So I mostly have heterosexual couples who engage with this.
I find it interesting, and it's not something that I talk a lot about publicly because I get, frankly, quite worried that I'd be cancelled, or I'd say the wrong thing completely unintentionally and then
Yeah.
offend someone, which I would never want to do. But I'll marry anyone. or any
Of
person,
course.
any body that identifies in any way and wants to marry anyone who identifies in any way. But I do find it interesting, though, the differences between heterosexual couples and two men or two women or two people. I find it very interesting. And often, there are moments of the wedding planning process that are cliche. That my two females, my two brides will answer my questionnaires in depth and on time and with pictures and they're a delight. So there are certain, cliche boxes that are ticked, but I find the whole thing fascinating in the differences between the dynamics of the relationship, which, as you say, starts when you start planning the wedding. And these
Yeah.
differences come out. And you can see how that relationship is going to manifest itself after the wedding day.
Yeah. Well, the research bears out that kind of queer couples, let's say, tend to have a more balanced division of labor in their
Mm-hmm.
households, unless and if they choose to have children and one of the partners steps back from the workforce to become a caretaker. Then those sort of more traditionally gendered dynamics can take hold in the relationship. So it's
Have you
not
had any
surprising.
Have you had any repeat customers?
I have had I have had support that I provide after the fact, because life has changes, and we go through different stages, and things get challenging in different stages. I always encourage couples to do annual check-ins, like an annual retreat, kind of state of the union, so to say, of their marriage. And sometimes I will facilitate things like that. I've thought about adding, kind of retreats, and maybe that's something I'll do in the future. But
Oh, you should. I'd come over if I have to come over to Santa Barbara.
I do live
For a
in a
gorgeous.
pretty delightful place to be able to do that. Yeah.
Yes, if I have to spend my day on the beach talking about, my marriage, then God damn it, I will. I think I think it's I just think it's absolutely fascinating, and it's the kind of topic that you must be constantly learning about, because it's constantly changing and it's constantly different with different people, because it's a people-based, science, like you say, it's social science. So there's no definitive guide. It's constantly changing.
Well, that's the beauty of coaching in this process, is it really is personalized and unique to each individual relationship. And that's how it
Mm.
should be, right? Because yes, we have these larger social systems that are impacting us and our behaviors, but we are individual people. And that's how we should approach this, is with your own needs and what you want your relationship to be.
Mm. I find it fascinating, and I think it's invaluable, actually, for that you offer a service that helps. Something that I don't think people don't focus enough on it. People don't focus enough on the day to day. It's boring. It's mundane. Just get on with it. Just
Sure.
sort of
It is
grin and
boring and
bear it.
mundane, but it'll
Mm.
cause a lot of problems. I promise you that, right? It will cause a lot of resentment and anger and disappointment. And those are a recipe for disaster in a relationship when those things start to build.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a reason why, if anyone's murdered, the first suspect is the spouse,
That's
Felicia.
right.
There's a reason why, because we've got so many utensils and kitchen knives and things and frying pans. So do you have plans, like you say, about maybe doing a physical in-person retreat? Are there plans to expand? Are there plans to sort of, I just think what you do is brilliant, and there must be so much scope to evolve the business and the company.
Yes, I have to reel myself in, because I'm,
Do you?
I can only do so much. But this premarital coaching program is an expansion, and I'm
Yeah.
really excited about it. I think it has the potential to impact lives and relationships in such a positive way and set marriages up for success, which is really what I set out to do, right? I set out to find strategies that real couples could use to build the relationships that they want early in the process. So this is a relatively new offering, and I'm really, really excited about it. But yes, there's always more to discover and do. And this dynamic is something that affects couples at all stages of their relationship.
Mm. Mm. I know. I think it's fascinating. I think you're very impressive, and I think
Thank
I can.
you.
You know, they say that the best revenge is to move on. So if you're going through a shitty marriage, the best thing to do is to go, do you know what? I'm going to help everyone else in the world avoid this shitty marriage.
Exactly right. That's exactly right.
You've done very, very well. You're an incredible example to us all, really. And I think it's like I say, it's fascinating, it's interesting, and it's definitely worth doing. So just if you had to, it's a very difficult question, I know, but if you had to give my couples the 3 top tips, 3 sort of little nuggets of advice as they embark on their wedding planning journey, do you have 3 little gold
I
mines
do.
that you might know? Oh, go on.
I
Tell
do.
me,
And
tell
we
me.
touched on all of them throughout our conversation, but I would say the number one tip I would suggest is to plan your life with as much excitement as you plan your wedding. That would be my first
Love
tip.
that.
Plan your life and your marriage.
Yeah.
Second tip is to get your communication in order. Learn how to communicate effectively with your partner. It will change your life for the better with everyone in your life when you become a good communicator. And the last one is to get granular about your shared vision for the future together. Make sure that you are clear about the nuts and bolts of what that's going to look like and how you're going to be flexible when and if things arise in your life and your relationship. Get really granular about how your life is going to look. These things will have a huge impact on your happy marriage.
I love that. Do you think it's too late 15 years later for me and my husband to start these 3 things?
Definitely not. Definitely not.
It's never too late.
It's
So,
never
and
too
where
late.
can we find
Never too
you?
late.
What's your website, your socials, all of that jazz? We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
But just to tell all the listeners, where can we find you?
Terrific. So you can find me at tendtask.com. That's TENDTASK.com. And I'm across socials with that same name on Instagram and Pinterest and most of the places you can find me that way.
Amazing. I could talk to you for hours, but I'm aware that it's now 2:30 in the morning for you.
Oh, it's all good. This was really fun. I'm glad we made it happen, and I'm delighted to chat with you anytime.
So am I. Thank you so much, Felicia. I really, really appreciate your time. And I think what you do is very impressive and very useful. And I think everyone should do it. And in fact, I might make it sort of, if you want to book Olivia Coleman, you have to go to Tend Task.
I love it.
Just so I know you're legit.
I love it.
So this week's RSVP is a corker. I got a message from Donna. She is getting married in 2 weeks' time, so pretty close to Christmas. And it's a last minute thing, but Donna's decided that she wants a Father Christmas, like a full-sized Father Christmas, to be in the foyer as her guests arrive. And her fiance is like, absolutely not, don't be absurd, it's going to cost like 300 quid. And she's like, no, I think we need it. I think it's absolutely necessary. So she wants to know my opinion. And do you know what, Donna? I think you need it. Maybe look into hiring one. But I think of course you bloody need it. It's the big man himself. Maybe that's the issue. Maybe your fiance feels intimidated because he doesn't have a sack like Santa's. Let me know how it goes.
Thank you so much for listening. It really does mean the world. If you find this podcast even remotely helpful or moderately entertaining, share with all your friends and family. You can DM me any questions, queries, if you want to share any stories on the podcast Instagram at I'll Marry You Podcast. Get in touch. I want to hear all your tall tales. See you soon.
I'll Marry You is a podcast by Olivia Coleman. The music is Mr. Sunnyface by Wayne Jones, and the show is produced and edited by Drew Toynbee.